superior. Just like today, Americans hate the Russians. And the Slav is what Teddy Roosevelt called them. No people could be worse than the Slav. So the Chinese are falling apart. The Slav is a horrible thing, but we got these proxy Japanese. They are proxy Americans. So just like we're using the Ukrainians to go against the Russians, Teddy Roosevelt says we'll have the little Japs, work for the Americans to fight for American civilization against the Slav. So Emperor Meiji sends one of his guys, Baron Kanoko. Who's Baron Kanoko? Baron Kanoko went to Harvard with Theodore Roosevelt. He was a friend of Theodore Roosevelt. He dressed in wonderful Western clothes. He knew Wall Street. He traveled in America. And Meiji says, we're not going to be able to beat Russia. We're going to have to negotiate an end to the war, the Russo-Japanese War. You go and get in in front of Teddy Roosevelt. So this is a long story, but Baron Kanoko goes to Teddy Roosevelt, who's president of the United States. And Teddy is saying, yeah, the Japanese are much more Aryan than us, Geez, isn't that silly to think that the Japanese are like the Chinese? They're not like the Chinese at all. They're just like us. I'm Teddy Roosevelt. I know all about racial theory. And
But Teddy has never been to Asia at this point.
No, Teddy Roosevelt's never seen the Pacific, doesn't know how to use chopsticks, doesn't know anything about Chinese history, but he knows racial theory. He went to Columbia and Harvard. And to be a genius at that time, again, not racism, but racial theory. Chinese are falling down, Slav is a Slav, and the Japanese, those are just like Americans. So Teddy's going to use the Japanese to friction the Slav, to keep the Slav out of Asia. China will fall down, and America will eventually be able to take over China with the British, because the Chinese are falling down and America is pre-positioned with the Japanese. So Baron Kanoko convinces them of this, and Teddy Roosevelt says in secret meetings with the Japanese, you should have a Japanese Monroe Doctrine for Asia. What's that? Well, the Monroe Doctrine says America has sway over all of South America and you better keep out. And Theodore Roosevelt says to the Japanese, you're the natural leaders of Asia, and there should be a Monroe Doctrine for Asia, Japanese Monroe Doctrine. So Japan does a surprise attack, just like Pearl Harbor against the Russians in 1904 in Korean and Chinese ports where the Russian fleet is. Well, in 1941, this was a day of infamy. The Japanese did a surprise attack, those horrible Japanese, Franklin Roosevelt said. In 1904, Theodore Roosevelt said, surprise attack, that's a wonderful idea, man. I love the Japanese surprise attack.
And he also brought the Japanese to fundraise for this surprise attack in Wall Street.
Oh,
he
yeah,
built
no.
this military.
So I'll bottom line at that anybody who sees China as an aggressor has no idea what happened for the last 200-300 years out in Asia, number one. And number two, the Japanese aggressiveness, that was greenlit by Theodore Roosevelt. And when Japan went into China in the early 1930s, see, people say World War II started in 1939 in Poland. No, it didn't. It started in 1931 in China. You can say it started in 1904 back in Korea, when Theodore Roosevelt allowed the Japanese to get onto the Asian continent. Japan was not on the Asian continent till Theodore Roosevelt said, go, go, go. And then the Japanese went from Korea to China, and Franklin Roosevelt said, Japan, you're buying U.S. steel? JP Morgan, you're borrowing from JP Morgan? Oh, this is great. So as the Japanese went and killed millions with the rape of Nanking and all this killing, that was all supported by Americans, 100%. America
Yes.
did not cut the oil of Japan until they invaded Vietnam, because Vietnam had resources that China didn't. So I'll leave it there for any questions.
Yeah. So actually, when you wrote the Imperial Cruise in 2009, you basically said Teddy Roosevelt handed Japan the keys to an Asian empire in 1905. If someone told you that 120 years later, Japan would be threatening to go to war with China over Taiwan again, under an American security umbrella, you argue Roosevelt himself created, would you be surprised?
No, because Americans are completely forgetting the history.